This is my research essay about the phenomenon of body horror in horror movies. So I'm going to start with my introduction. Human beings have a fraught and tense relationship with our own body. It is the vessel of our life, the cradle of new life, a wonder of evolutionary history on Earth. But there is a dark side to our bodies. All bodies age inevitably. They break down as we get older, get sicker, become less able to perform the primary functions of our lives. Eventually, the body performs its ultimate betrayal and we die. In horror movies, the dynamic shifts, and often with horrific consequences. The body in horror movies is often the scene of penetration, murder, and intrusion by other parties, but in select horrors, the body itself becomes the site of horror and is consumed, changed, or taken over by an outside influence. Alien, The Thing, Raw, and The Fly all represent bodies under threat and taken over by savage invaders, infection, or hereditary lottery. If the body becomes a site of horror and the agent of destruction, then the horror becomes personal and subverts the expectations of the audience. The threat is not from outside, but from within. The body itself is rendered a weapon against humanity. So first I'm going to start with a little explanation on what is body horror. So in his article, Mutations and Metamorphoses, Body Horror is Biological Horror, Ronald Lopez Cruz talks about how body horror is a genre trope that showcases often graphic violations of the human body and is also justifiably called biological horror. These depictions of horror are shown through mutations, metamorphoses, hybrids, transformations. One of the most grotesque depictions of body horror comes through in The Thing, 1982, director John Carpenter. The Thing brings an extreme level of gruesome disregard for the human body, and it categorizes this horror film as a body horror or biological horror. This popular trope is characterized by the manipulation and warping of the normal state of bodily form and function. In his article Horrality, the textuality of contemporary horror films, Philip Brophy states that the essential horror of The Thing was in The Thing's total disregard and ignorance of the human body. Contemporary horror films play on not the fear of death, but the fear of one's own body, its potential destruction, and its capability for the destruction of everything around it. Anne Gerslev, another prolific author on the subject, focuses on splatter movies like zombie or gore movies and writes that in them the monster is the monstrous body, not the monstrous character like Michael Myers from Halloween or Jason from Friday the 13th. This is a whole new category on its own. So, body horror generally makes the body, obviously, the focal point of the movie, and this holds true for all 4 of the movies I've selected as examples. And one of the engines of body horror in all of these movies is transformation, the turning of one thing into another. In this case, this turning of the normal human body into something inhuman or subhuman. In The Fly, Seth Brundle steps into a teleporter and steps out with the genetic material of a common housefly incorporated into his own. He subsequently transforms into a human fly hybrid, so-called Brundle fly. The uncertainty of what will be produced by the unnatural union is what frightens us, like the end result of the transformation. We have the slow path of his turning into the fly put in front of our faces. The subversion of his limbs, his wings growing, it's all in front of us, and that's what horrifies and what frightens. It's comparable to human cloning, and that's an example that Lopez Cruz gives in his article. Human cloning is not yet practiced because of the many complications in the process. People are scared of mutations, aberrations, informities, deformities that could come from this. And The Fly takes these fears and puts them on a screen for everyone to see. Suddenly, we are not just watching Seth Brundle turn into a fly, we are seeing ourselves and our own body transform into something inhuman right before our very eyes. And it not only scares us, not only frightens us to see him do this, we pity him. We pity him because our own body is displayed up there on the screen. Our own potential bodies are under attack. The horror of uncertainty, of the health or inhumanity, the inhumanity of what's going on in front of our eyes is a real concern for the audience, as been depicted in films again and again, regardless. We are scared of the potential for what the human body can turn into. And we are scared of seeing everything that we have inside brought outside. But that's something we'll save for talking about The Thing, which I'm going to do next. The Thing is also a hybrid movie and a transformation body horror film. And it shows in it, The Thing is a combination of elements that are not normally brought together. So the alien and the dog hybrid, the alien and the human hybrid. It's obvious The Thing has not yet been, maybe it's been to other worlds, but has not been to this world yet. And this is a totally inhuman and alien transformation, a totally inhuman and alien presence that's been bestowed on these people in the North Pole. The Thing baffles and fools every human around it. The humans can't pick up on it until, well, they can't pick up on it, they can't get ahead of it until partway through the film, and even that falls out by the end. But the dogs detect the abnormality easily. The alien dog hybrid is brought into the pen, and they keep their distance from it. They look at it with caution. And they go wild when it finally releases, when it finally starts to change and releases its evil and manifests its form. The dogs are concentrated on scent, what's inside the body, the inherent wrongness of the thing. Humans see that it presents a normal surface, and they don't go beneath the surface. They accept what's on the surface level. Once we see the inside of the thing is when we realize that something's wrong, that something inhuman, something alien is happening, and that this is not normal. Socially, our bodies represent something, the insides of our bodies represent something alien to us. We're not supposed to see our insides on the outside. It's supposed to remain inside. That sounds simple, but that's what people think generally. Seeing the insides of our bodies, we are confronted by a region almost as alien to us as someone else's mind. Like, we know our own mind, we don't know anybody else's, but we don't know the insides of our own body, and that's how it's supposed to be. These scenes, the revelation scenes, make the thing a juxtaposition between the unreadable exterior and the unspeakable interior. It scares us with the insides of our own bodies. And it's a gesture at what's so-called the thingliness of human beings, which I got from the article Underneath the Skin, John Carpenter's The Thing. We ourselves are uncertain about ourselves. We ourselves harbor fright for ourselves, just like we see in The Fly. And once those fears are brought to the surface, shown externally, it frightens us and it scares us. One last example for this. The xenomorph alien also embodies this human-other hybrid quite efficiently through the idea of the alien being deposited in John Hurt's chest. And the chest burster scene is so scary and unexpected because it shows the ruined body on display. We see, literally, the alien waits in the darkness for the host to stumble upon the egg, and then it strikes when the viable host arrives. The alien plants itself deep in the human, and invading the body, subsuming the resources, feeding on it, stealing its oxygen, threatening to kill it if it's disturbed. Then it releases. The alien hibernates in the body, biding its time until it's fully formed and ready to strike. And then chestburster scene. Ruined body on display, chest torn open, blood everywhere. The crew looking on in horror at what has been externalized from the internal cavity of the body. The horror of what is lurking inside of us, all put on display here. And the final transformation of all of these things is what it's been building towards. The monster transforming the body, the monster bringing the internal out into the external, and us reacting in horror when we see it. Another part of body horror films is metamorphosis. Metamorphosis and transformation are two different things. Metamorphosis is a gradual, protracted change. In biological terms, metamorphosis is an organism's post-embryological change in form, such as from larval to adult stages. Talking about larval to adult stages, it most matches with the fly. Seth's transformation to the brundlefly is, as I said before, protracted and gradual. We watch the whole movie play out when he's becoming this brundlefly, and there's nothing really glorious about it. Every time he wakes up in the morning, he has a new aspect of his body that has changed in the night, and he reacts with horror upon seeing it. At first it's okay because he gains new skills, like he has increased virility and he has increased energy and he's feeling great. But then suddenly his body starts to change, the external showing from the internal, and he's frightened, scared. Even though Seth is morbidly fascinated, we are as well, but we are also scared. Now, the fly itself, this creature that he's transforming into, is not adaptive, and there's no, he's unable to fly because the wings can't support him, and there's no competitor of the species to account for. This transformation, this metamorphosis, actually not transformation, has taken Seth beyond his species and reduced him to something that's actually inhuman. He is now completely incompatible with humans. He's become something that is beyond our reach, really something out of the whole range of possibility. He is of his own species. There's nothing like him else in the world. He's an evolutionary dead end. Nothing will come from him. He's not an abomination. Quoting again from an article, In Praise of the Fly, the body horror, In Praise of the Fly, the body horror that's all in your head, they say, the Brundle fly is an abomination not only for its appearance and its corruption of an erstwhile human body, but also for its physiological impracticalities and inefficiencies. That's the metamorphosis of the fly is so horrifying because it reduces the final product into something that is completely unable to survive on its own, completely inhuman, completely outside the realm of our own possibility, that we can't even rationalize it or think about it in a way. We just want it to end. More subtly than in The Fly, metamorphosis comes through in the film Raw. Now, Justine is the youngest member of a family of strict vegetarians who follows in the footsteps of her parents and joins her rebellious older sister Alexia at veterinary school. The freshman hazing rituals are really horrific. Students are harassed in the middle of the night. They get their beds tossed out the windows. They get drenched with animal blood. They're forced to crawl on their hands and knees up a staircase and through a dark parking lot. And the final culminating hazing ritual, she has to eat a piece of raw rabbit kidney. Now, as she begins to settle into school life, a newfound hunger for meat when she's never had one before, and a gross skin rash emerge. Justine's cannibalism, her increasing desire for human flesh throughout the movie, represents a coming of age with pressures that are actually biological. Her emerging sexuality, her exposure to an environment, her ingestion of animal meat leads to this gradual, protracted metamorphosis. She becomes more and more curious about the effect that meat has on her, the gaining of new abilities, kind of like Seth in The Fly, that at first are positive, but then slowly take on a more horrific countenance as she continues in this movie. By the end, she has become a flesh-eating cannibal, united with her older sister against the rest of the school, and resorting to killing drivers on abandoned stretches of road for nutrients, for nourishment. It's about the metamorphosis, the change, the gradual protracted change into something different. You can also see this in Alien, the metamorphosis of the xenomorph through juvenile to full-grown adult. In all these movies, it's about the metamorphosis, the final form. Transformation is about the body, and the metamorphosis is about the metamorphosis is almost the mindset. Yeah. But there are a lot more questions to consider when looking at the phenomenon of body horror in film. And now that I've talked about the actual acts of body horror and what they represent, what does this mean for us? Body horror is so effective because the site of horror is ourselves. So what does the body represent to us about our own fundamental struggle to survive? Now, there are a few frameworks to look at this out of. The biological framework provides a very interesting idea about this. And for the case of the hybrid, such as the fly or the thing. Species are defined in several ways by biologists, but the most well accepted is the biological species concept, which defines it as a group of interbreeding individuals that can produce fertile offspring. When you're in the wild, two individuals of different species are prevented from mating by physical reproductive barriers. Should fertilization occur, the sperm may be killed by the internal environment of the female, or it's sterile, such as the fact of the mule, the artificial hybrid of a female horse and a male donkey. Interspecies hybrids are abnormal. They don't occur naturally, and they don't lead to any successful evolutionary lineage. So it doesn't contribute to the growth of a population. So this goes against the inherent drive of all species, which is to obviously copulate, fornicate, extend the lineage, and pass on their genes. Hybrids represent a biological species concept that is inherently anti-life and against the evolutionary order. Seeing hybrids on screen should present this idea to us. If you're not reproducing for the sake of your own species, you will go extinct. It's not viable, and it's not acceptable. This is the biological species concept. This is the biological framework that explains to us why body horror and the concept of hybrids is so horrific to us. But it can be looked at in different perspectives, socially, culturally. No one has the right answer, and all perspectives supply something different about the concept of body horror. It's a phenomenon that changed film, the history of film, the shift to the body horror types of films, to our perception of ourselves and how we transform and metamorphosize and how we see that reflected, the internalization versus externalization debate, and of course through the biological perspective, the understanding of our own bodies. The biological perspective is the one that I found the most information about. It's not an effort, as I said before, as I've continued to say, it's not the effort to provide a biological explanation to these horror films, but to show what makes body horror truly frightening. The central hypothesis, as I've mandated through examples already, is that body horror finds strength in the way it goes against what is considered normal anatomy and function in biological species, not only limited to humans. But socially, it represents something very different to us. I'm going to quote from Underneath the Skin, John Carpenter's The Thing. It is pure alterity, wrapped in the most familiar of disguises. It is the unknown made flesh and given the face of your best friend. It is a reminder of death as well as the chaos from which we arose, but its most disturbing connection may be to our everyday nature. The Thing parades our nature before us, a mysterious exterior, unreadable but for behavioral clues, paired with an alien, slippery interior. We are as unknown, as weird, as most anything we are likely to find in the dark abyss of space. Through our societal organizations, we find ways of distracting us from the stranger aspects of our nature. They can never fully obscure the mystery below our skins. This quote is interesting in a lot of ways. It talks a lot about the strangeness that lurks within us, our desire to mask it, and once we see the externalization of our internal nature, we are too scared to almost carry on. Final question for this, just real quick wrap up. The topic of transformation is intertwined with body horror. Is the final product more horrific than the slow transformative journey of the mutated body? I'm going to say no. I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say that the slow transformative journey of the mutated body is almost harder to watch. Every day waking up with the dread that your body has changed again, as Seth did in The Fly, or Justine did in Raw. Just the way that your body is changing and you have no control over it. At least there's some relief with the final product. You're done changing. You can only accept what you've become. When you're transforming, when you're metamorphosizing, there's still the hope that you could go back, that you could put the insides back inside. Once you're fully externalized, though, there's no covering it up, there's no hiding it. You can only continue, and you can only indulge in the destruction that you've now decided you're capable of because of your outside appearance. Okay, I'm gonna end it there. Thank you so much for listening.